Thank you, and it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you so much to this wonderful organization. I am very excited and pleased to be here to hopefully inspire and share with you some of the exciting things that are happening in an industry that I believe actually touches this industry in various ways. Though I will forewarn you, much of what I'm going to be talking about does not necessarily relate to food. Conceptually, however, I think it is also very relevant. So I'm going to discuss three things with you. The first thing I'm going to cover are impact areas, particularly critical impact areas. Though previous speakers have actually done a wonderful job already of talking a lot about that. So I'm going to move a little bit quickly on that one. But I'm going to really hone in on what I call collaborative transparency. And finally, talking about ways to drive impact, importantly at scale, right? Not at a small little micro level, but really at a more macro level. Now, before I do that, I figure I am at a pet industry event here. I do not normally present to the pet industry. This is the first time. And I am representing the fashion industry, and I need to make sure that all of you know that I am actually way more of an animal lover than I am a fashion lover. So I want to make sure that you are very clear on that. That's my cat, and it is, I promise, very sweet, though he does occasionally puncture certain things, and that's the dog of my household. Now, beyond being a pet or an animal lover, I am a consumer, just like all of you. All of you purchased, whether they were for new or secondhand, all of the clothing that we're wearing right now. And for me, sustainability is deeply important. It is a life mission of mine, and occasionally I update why I'm doing this. And I would encourage you all to sort of take a quick moment and think about why you are here. And so this image is an extremely important image for me. Recently, I had the fortunate opportunity to spend 7 days in the Sumatran jungle of northern Sumatra, specifically the Lesser Gunung National Park. And this is where I encountered this male orangutan. And when I took this photo of this orangutan, there was a very distinct background noise. And remember, I'm in a national park. The distinct background noise that I heard when I took this photo was of chainsaws. Not of animals, no, chainsaws. And I was in a national park. So when we were talking about earlier, WWF, there was an awesome presentation, particularly focused on illegal sourcing. Everything that I saw when I was there had everything to do with sourcing practices. Not necessarily apparel, I'm not going to call it a particular industry here, but it was extremely powerful, if not life-changing. So I would encourage you all to consider kind of finding something, if you have not already found something to really deeply connect with. I have this photo on my wall in my office. It's the background of my computer. It reminds me every single day why I'm doing this. Now, to shift gears, there are some really serious impacts in the apparel, or more broadly, textile industry. So if you make anything that has any type of textiles, these are going to be your problems. Problem number one is wastewater effluent. If you like things with color that do not come from the original color of a fiber or something, it's dyed. Well, unfortunately, much of the dyeing process distributes water that's not treated. So much of the chemicals and amazing things that make our things look so beautiful go into waterways just like this one. And this is a major issue that we are very, very seriously focused on. Another issue is air. So this is in China as well, but definitely not only happening in China. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you know this, but marathons is actually one of the fastest growing sort of activities in China. They're really into this. But this is crazy, right? So emissions to air is a huge problem with this industry that has everything to do with how we generate energy to produce the energy of these factories. It's a problem. Another one, what is this? Anybody help me? Where is this? Anybody recognize this photo? Bangladesh. This is the Rana Plaza disaster. Over 1,000 workers, mostly women, were killed in this factory. Just making stuff that we wear, right? Lots of different brands were in this place. Lots. And the scary part is they had no idea they were in this place. That says a lot. And finally, I'm not going to harp on this one, but it has a lot to do with resources. The apparel, footwear, textile industries are very resource intensive. Unfortunately, much of the resources that are being used to create our textiles are not necessarily renewable resources, or like we had seen yesterday when we started to talk about the regenerative concept. We are not remotely there, okay? And it needs to be, because we are using way more resources than this planet can reintroduce or recreate for us to use again. And we're just using it very rapidly. If you've never heard of the Earth Overshoot Day, I highly recommend you take a look at that. Simple Google search, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's actually quite cool to sort of use the concept there. But here's the good news, right? That's kind of downer. So I'm going to bring us up a little bit. The hope here is that there really is a better way. And I can actually say with great confidence that there really is a better way. These are the 5 core tenets of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. Active leadership. We'll see it right here. You got it right in this room. Collaboration. Again, check. Equal partnership. Anybody have any idea what that means? So equal partnership is really important at the SAC. It speaks to the voice of all stakeholders. Needs to be at the table. I'll share with you who is a stakeholder in the SAC, and I would encourage you to consider what that concept means to you. I'll explain further in a second. Transparency, and finally, continuous improvement. So with that in mind, the SAC was started with an idea that was born only in 2009, so we haven't been around that long. The idea was, interestingly, created by Patagonia and Walmart. Now, if you're thinking, wait, why in the world would Patagonia and Walmart get together on something? They don't do business together. They don't sell anything respectively, right? So this is weird. And it comes down to this. As they became more and more, Patagonia, Walmart, and others became more and more aware of the problems that I was just describing in the photos, they started to attack them. And how did they do it? They started creating surveys and audits. The problem is that everyone was doing it on their own. And so then you had the manufacturers who may have never been audited before, or may have been audited a little bit more, having an auditor come in one day from, let's say, Macy's. And then the very next day, they had an auditor come in from H&M. And then the next day, they had an auditor come in from Inditex. And every single survey was different. The auditor may have been the same person from the same company. And what we were creating manufacturers that were becoming really good audit takers. No change, just, oh, this brand wants my fire extinguisher 5 feet above the ground. This other brand is 4.5 feet above the ground. And I am not kidding. If you have not heard a story about this, this is a real story. There are manufacturers with multiple fire extinguishers at multiple levels because there are different requirements. Doesn't make them safer. Anyway, that was the idea, is that, wow, we are really disjointed here. Let's create a uniform standard. They took that idea and they took it a step further, and they created a vision for an apparel, footwear, and textile industry that produces no unnecessary environmental harm and has a positive impact on the people and communities associated with its activities. We are very holistic. Sustainability is a big picture at the SAC. And who's involved is also very broad. So we have stakeholders that range from retailers, brands, manufacturers, but also industry associations, service providers, academia, nonprofits, and government are all at the table. These are some of the companies that are involved. Today there are over 205 organizations that are members of the SAC from around the world. Some of these are the largest companies in the world, but we also have some really small companies that are also stepping up to this, though I would have to say that the work that's involved is a lot. And so for smaller companies, we do some different things, and I can elaborate if there's some questions about that. And this organization is all rallying around something called the Higg Index. Actually, by a show of hands, who has heard of the Higg Index before? Oh, awesome. Okay, so a lot of people. So the Higg Index is a very comprehensive suite of tools that assesses in a standardized way. To be clear, this is not a standard. We do not have a stamp. We are not a certification. This is the standardization of the questions that are asked to determine how well or not well you are doing. So you could be the worst performing manufacturer on the face of the earth, and you can be on Higg.org. Okay? So this is about scoring and transparency of how well or not well you are doing, and helping us to identify where you can improve. So the tools range from design to materials to manufacturing, logistics and policies at our brands and our retailers. Soon, the actual retail operations that starts to get into LEED or green building technologies, your distribution centers, and finally, the North Star, a comprehensive product environmental footprint tool. And I'm going to give you a teaser at the end of this presentation that's going to give you an idea of exactly where we're headed. And we're headed there very quickly, by the way. This is not something like pie in the sky idea here. We're moving at a very fast pace. The platform, Higg.org, has grown dramatically. Now, this has only really been online since 2014. There are now, the tool is being used in over 78, well, no, not over, 78 countries, over 10,000 companies, almost 20,000 assessments have been posted, and there are over 44,000 connections. So one thing I want to be very clear on is this platform, this idea, is similar to a LinkedIn mechanism. So let's pretend that I am, I don't know, let's pretend I'm Nike. I represent Nike. And I have 3 manufacturers out here. And then also sitting at another table is Adidas. And actually this happens, believe it or not, despite the fact that they may be suing each other, but they are still working together in this pre-competitive environment. And Nike and Adidas, we may have some manufacturers in common. In fact, I can assure you that they do. We don't necessarily need to know. So on this platform, we are connected to our manufacturers. Remember my example is like, oh, there's 5 of you that produce for both of us. We have no idea that you produce for both of us. When we're connected to each other on this platform, the exchange of sustainability practices is one-to-one. Okay? So I hope I made that clear. I'm moving a little fast. But if you have more questions about how that connection dynamic works, if we have questions at the time for questions at the end, we'll go into it. Last, before I start talking about how we take this knowledge and this pre-competitive collaboration into scalable impact, I want to give you a very clear, kind of boring, not so sexy slide here about how we discover insights from data. So if you're speaking the same language, right, the language being the Higg Index assessments, then from that you're able to derive a lot of insights. And some of those insights relate to hotspots. We call them hotspots. These are the areas in the supply chain that are of particular concern. And so I showed you some photos of those areas that are particularly nasty, but here, the difference here is that we have thousands and thousands of factories answering the same questions, and we know where those hotspots are. And so what we're showing you here is 2015 data of the Higg Facility Environmental Module. Down here, oh cool, this works. We have different categories, very hard to read. EMS, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, water use, wastewater effluent emissions, waste management, chemicals. And the red arrows are denoting the 2 worst performing categories on this module. So the SAC uses this knowledge and says, these are the areas that are of most concern. And we dive deeper into these areas, we can determine exactly what regions are the worst performing regions, and then we can use that information to then scale impact. And that's what I'm going to share with you what that looks like now. Okay, so driving impact reductions at scale. I use this image, it's a pretty powerful, provocative image, you know, kind of ridiculous actually, but I use this to ask a question. Does anyone in the audience know, on average, how many pounds of textile waste the average American throws away to landfill?
Like in a lifetime?
Sorry, thank you. Per year.
50.
50 pounds. Close. It's 82 pounds. That's just textile waste. But that's everything. Like, that could include textiles that they purchase for their pets, right? This is not just fashion industry. This is well beyond. This is broad-based textile. Anything that's made out of textiles, right? That's a lot. And I can tell you that that's actually confirmed in the Higg Index when the brands and retailers go through their own assessments of their own practices. The worst performing category in the environmental assessment for brands and retailers is end of use. There are no plans. This stuff is being created and it's ending up in a landfill. And worse yet, it's being created, and now I'm going to shift to this design and raw materials side. It's being created without any technology in place to be able to do anything with it at the end of its use. So in other words, there are material innovations and blends that are being created every day, and there's no plan for any of them when they're done. That is a huge problem. And this is a standout problem. And so what I'm going to show you now is a bit of a teaser of a tool that we launched just this past October called the Design and Development Module. And it pulls from something called the Material Sustainability Index, or MSI. Right now, I can tell you the MSI is publicly available. You're going to get in the outputs that's going to be sent to you from Caitlin and whatnot. It's going to include a link to this, so you don't have to go crazy on researching this stuff. You'll have a link to the MSI. Have at it. It's going to have a whole bunch of life cycle assessment data on numerous different material types. And so that material information is used by designers today in the fashion industry to help determine impact of their designs. And so they plug and play. This is a little difficult to read, but they plug and play different material blends. They're constantly updating a score. The higher the score, the greater the environmental impact. It's a very easy user interface that covers everything from materials, manufacturing, care and repair, end of use, quality, and lifetime. So this is by the way, this is a very controversial one. Durability. Very controversial, not a huge weighting for another conversation. When you create those materials, those products, when you design those products, before you put them in production, you're now going to have this very powerful opportunity to know impact before you put it in production, and then you're going to have this ability to compare impacts. So you're going to have different, these designers are creating different lines, they are comparing the impact levels or the scores, and what's also really cool about this is when you hover over a score, it immediately tells you what percentage of the other shirts, whatever curtains, whatever's on there, what percentage is this product better than? So there's a kind of a gamification, there's a little bit of a benchmarking opportunity that designers have had absolutely nothing like this before. So this is a really, really very powerful concept, and it's very fresh, it's very new. Other things, I'm going to keep on going here. Environmental impact, this gets deeper into the different impact areas. So you can take a fiber, you can take a material, and you can determine what its water footprint is, and then you can take another material and you can blend that into a given product, and you can see the impact on the overall water footprint of the product. So you can get really granular on this. Analyze hotspots. Okay, but at the end of the day, what the designer is getting is they're getting a single score, which designers you got to get something relatively simple on this front. This is the first kind of real tool that they're really using related to environmental impact, such as this. Benchmarking analytics, if they want to get crazy on that. Performance improvement and competition, healthy competition, we find helps a lot. So that's what we're giving the designers. My last message for you relates to the supply chain and brands and retailer assessments. Okay, so how this works is the Higg is broken down into these assessments. This is also publicly available. You can download the entire Higg Index tool in Excel And anybody can do it. And it's on our website, and it's part of the fact that we're a mission-based nonprofit organization. So we're we're open sourcing these tools. I'm going to run you through a very quick example of how this can work for your supply chain, or yourselves as a brand or retailer or a manufacturer, doesn't matter. This question asks a very fundamental question. This happens to be in the energy and greenhouse gas emissions section. And it asks, does your site track and measure at least annually energy use from all sources, including energy generated on-site and purchased energy? This is real data. 2014, the sample size is about 1,600 facility or manufacturer respondents. Same population over 2 years. And so you see overwhelmingly yes. It's basically, they're keeping track of their bills, right? They fundamental. Oh, and now I think there we go. I almost really blew that up. Okay, here we go. Next question is, do you set and review at least annually improvement targets for reducing energy use? Well, we just got a lot more no's, right? A lot more. And then let's take it a step further. Has your site had an energy audit conducted in the last 3 years by a certified professional to identify potential energy and cost savings? Overwhelmingly, no. Okay, and by the way, I want to point something out. Everything is quantified. This question's worth 15 points. So what we can do from this is we know where this is asked. We know the region here. We have plenty of case study data from solution providers specifically focused on energy efficiency. We know a really decent picture of how much low-hanging fruit there is in this supply chain when it comes to energy efficiency, so we can start to extract potential. And so in this case, this is the business case. This is the business case for having energy audits in all those no's, right? And we estimate, based on the average savings in the regions that were asked of these questions, that over $11 million could be saved. Very rough number, okay? Very, very rough. But it's something, okay? And lastly, where we take this to another level is through partnership. And so key word for you is collaboration, 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 right? So with this transparency and with brands and retailers and manufacturers agreeing to answer and complete the same assessment, they have also agreed to work with organizations like the Natural Resource Defense Council. NRDC has a program. I highly encourage you to look this up. It's called Clean by Design. Clean by Design used the awareness, the insights of the HIG into, remember I was talking about the wastewater effluent and the emissions, those are mills, right? So they took that knowledge in collaboration with brands and retailers to go on site and scale up impact. So they went in there with engineers and experts, partly funded, by the way, by brands and retailers, because they share the same supply chain. So they recognize these huge factories that have these huge problems, if they pool their efforts, they are actually able to improve practices for all of them dramatically. And so these are the data points that came out of their first iteration of the Clean by Design program. And they were very, very impressive. And this program continues to gain great traction within the SAC space. Okay, so to wrap up, I covered 3 things. I talked about identifying and acknowledging critical impact areas. It's essential. I know that there's probably fear from amongst many companies to even know what the heck is going on deep in the supply chain in particular. I encourage you to get over that fear soon because more and more people, consumers, maybe if you're in Europe, more regulators, more people are demanding transparency, okay? It's coming. Second, standardize the measurement. Get on the same language, speak the same language. It creates incredible efficiencies. You can be very inefficient by going at it your own, and that would just not really get us where we need to get to, and as quickly as we need to get there. Finally, partner. That's a huge one too. Partnership, it should be pretty self-evident. That image is purposeful. That is not a made-up image. That label right there, remember, we are not a certification. So this is an environmental score. This was in conjunction with the European Union and specifically the European Commission. This label was tested in 7 countries in Europe, just concluded this pilot test in non-leather footwear. And it was at the point of sale, and there was a whole bunch of analysis related to the consumer. So we are at the point where we are readying ourselves to achieve our goal, which is a vision for 2020 to be fully transparent. We are going to equip brands, retailers, manufacturers with all the tools to be able to be, with great confidence, fully transparent from the beginning of the supply chain to the end to the consumer. And so that's the path we're on. It's extremely aggressive right now, but we have to hit it, actually. It's just the nature of the environment now. The expectations and the pressure are really on. Yeah, with that, I thank you for your time, and I don't know if I have time for questions. I do. Sweet.
So what would it take to take this idea to the pet industry, to all the accessories?
Yeah, so that's what we're exploring. And I think it's, quite frankly, I think it's going to be pretty easy. Now, I'm hesitant to say easy for anything. The reason why I said it is because there's an opportunity here for any company that produces anything related to textiles to literally take the keys and turn the switch. You don't have to create anything. These questions are there. The assessment is there. The platform is there. And so what we're working out is how we can formalize that relationship to benefit you all. Absolutely, yes. Pilot definitely is part of that conversation as well, most definitely. And by the way, pilot, you can actually do some piloting now without any sort of formalized anything. Because, again, the Higg Index assessments are open sourced.
But the pilot would mean also tell the story publicly.
Not yet.
That would be part.
We're not there yet. Sorry. So the follow-up. Well, okay. The follow-up question or the first question? Okay. The follow-up question was related to could we do some sort of a pilot? And so that's what I was saying. Yes, absolutely. That's what we're talking about. But there is nothing stopping you from trying this or testing this out a little bit. At least becoming more familiar with the questions that are asked in the current versions of the Higg Index, because it's available for download. Now, side note on that, by the way, is that the assessments are updated periodically. There is an update coming in November and in the first quarter of 2018 for different modules. So there are some big milestones that are going to be hit very soon. So watch out for that. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I got two quick questions for you. First is, how does the Higg work when considering third-party textile certification organizations such as BlueSign or Okotex?
Awesome. Both those organizations, well, BlueSign, member of the SAC, Okotex was, but we still collaborate with them, extremely complementary. So example to be had on Patagonia's website. If you go into, like if you find a jacket or something like that, they will show you, they will tell you what the manufacturer was that made that jacket. And often now, interestingly, is they're actually communicating BlueSign or I think Okotex. They may also be going with GOTS on cotton and whatnot. They're communicating to the consumer certifications at the manufacturing level. The mass majority of consumers, of course, are not going to know what the heck that is. But point is that those certifications are extremely complementary to the performance of not only Patagonia as a brand on the Higg Index, but also the manufacturer themselves. So if they're a BlueSign certified manufacturer, you can safely assume that their score on the Higg Index is going to be relatively high.
Great, thank you. And the second question, you showed that shoe with the rating, which I thought was really interesting. From your standpoint, that has textile, but it also has thermoplastics foams. How do you value the composition of that when considering the entire products, in particular for my interest around thermoplastics?
Absolutely. So yeah, footwear is, I never knew, I had no experience in this industry before taking this job on, and I never knew how complicated footwear is. It's insane. So this is a label that is intended to capture the entire footprint, no pun intended, of this pair of shoes. So it is intended to be comprehensive. The Material Sustainability Index that I had alluded to earlier has numerous different types of materials, including plastics, in foams, and applications such as sealants and things that you put on after. It actually is quite comprehensive. But there's more work to be had. There are plenty of finishes and chemicals and things like that the jury is still out. So there's, this is a work in progress.
So I think as a follow-up to that I get that you covered processing and manufacturing, but is raw material sourcing included in this, and how is that impact measured?
Yeah, so at the farm or in the laboratory.
Or extraction, yeah.
Or extraction, right. Okay, so the assessment, the Higg assessment, or Higg.org, that assesses your environmental practices and your social labor practices, take a look at any part of the supply chain, no matter what you're doing. Now, is it a perfect all-size-fit-all? No. Is the next iteration getting closer to becoming more of a choose-your-own-adventure kind of thing? Yes. So there's going to be a set of pre-qualification questions in the next iteration of the facility environmental module that will help identify, okay, what are you actually doing and where are your strongest impact points? So we're getting closer to being smarter on asking the questions for all the way down to that level. But there's another part of that equation. The other part is the actual life cycle assessment of the raw material you're creating. They are two separate things. So, and that assessment comes through on the Material Sustainability Index. So I know this is kind of complicated, but it's basically like if you're a raw material, so if you're involved in the extractive process, well, we're going to be looking at your practices as an organization. If you are making a raw material, we will be looking at the material itself for its environmental implications, and then we will be looking at how you are actually running your operation, both environmentally and socially and labor speaking. They're separate. They're all three are separate assessments. It's a lot of work, by the way. So.
Hi, Scott. I had a question about the MSI module. I found that quite fascinating about finding out the footprint that one product for the end user. How the data that goes into it, how long has it been collected?
That's a great question. So the MSI was released shortly after the design and development module. So they're two separate sort of entities. The MSI, or Material Sustainability Index, is what is publicly available. The design and development module is actually accessible throughout with a license agreement. Okay. So how long has the data been used essentially, or how long has it lived? So the tool itself is very new. It's been, originally the MSI came from Nike. They created it 6 years ago. Did anybody, show of hands, know or ever seen the Making app? Oh, hey, Caitlin, well done. So Nike came up with the MSI in the first place. The only problem with that is that it was all Nike's supply chain. So it looked at the impacts of the raw materials that were into Nike's products, and then they created this really cool app, which you can actually download for free on the App Store. And it's actually kind of neat to check it out. What we've done over 5 years is take that, standardize the life cycle assessment, and produce or report out the environmental impacts of a whole host of materials that went beyond those that are just for Nike's supply chain, and the impacts are not specific to where Nike gets those products. I'll give you a very simple example, cotton. Cotton, overall, you could say it has a certain impact, call it X. But if you make cotton in North Carolina, conventional cotton, and then you make organic cotton in India, the environmental impacts of those two cotton fibers are going to be very different. So today, we have a lot of averaged information that's readily available, but where this gets really exciting is that we are accepting at source LCA data. So as a raw material manufacturer, you'll be able to submit your life cycle assessment data, and it will be available on the MSI for designers from around the world to be able to pick your material and see how it works from an environmental standpoint into your product. So, yeah.
Going off that durability component, how do you see your coalition's role in encouraging manufacturers to increase the lifespan of their products? And then also, how are you encouraging development of technology to deal with used textiles?
Okay. So, durability is a tough one. I called it controversial earlier because it's very gray in exactly how you determine it. I mean, people have arguments about, well, wait a second, I could test it. There's a lot of machines that do test durability. I've seen plenty of them in manufacturers. But as far, oh, I just killed that. As far as how we encourage it, I'm gonna sort of redefine what like SAC is, right? So we are a coalition of the industry and numerous stakeholders. So staff, we do not necessarily put a stake in the ground and say that you have to have this shirt last 3 to 5 years. So we're not really doing that as a policy. But what we are doing, and this goes into the philosophy, is that we believe that standardizing the assessment and then radical transparency, opening it up, saying this is how good or not good you are as a manufacturer or a brand or a product, et cetera, that behavior, that score will actually drive and motivate that behavior. And I will give you a real example of this right now. H&M publicly shared that they are using the scores on the Higg Index facility environmental module with their manufacturers, so this actually gets to your point, that they are using the scores as a threshold by which they qualify for incentives. So those incentives could be, don't quote me on this, but those incentives could be things like more attractive financing, 0% interest for 30 days, and more advanced notice on next season or guaranteed next season, whatever it is. So the better you do, the better you score on the Higg Index with an environmental score, the better you're going to qualify for these sweeteners, which I think is really awesome. So that just started. I mean, this is all really just happening. So, all right, thank you. I think that's it, right? Okay.